Hey, friends, and welcome back to Shelf Talks. I'm your host, Roberta, and today we are excited to have with us Rebecca Alvarez Story, wife, mother, sexologist, and founder of Bloomi, a sexologist led wellness destination that provides inclusive sexual education and intimate health essentials for all bodies, which I love that inclusive is already in kind of your mission statement. So love that. Welcome, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for this conversation today. So I think, let's just kind of dive in. So first, maybe, it would be great to understand prior to Bloomi, where were you in your life, in your career? Like, what did that actually look like?
Before I started Bloomi, I was working as a consultant doing a lot of intimacy consulting, which is still, I think, pretty new. And back then, if you go back like 10, even 5 years, it was very different, but so needed. I was doing basically like consulting for startups that were developing intimacy products. And we would walk through how to make them inclusive, how to really get the correct anatomy, materials that mattered. I was also doing a lot of sex education, like workshops. I'm a teacher at heart. That's how I started. I was a sex ed teacher. So
Oh, okay.
I love still being part of the community and doing things with adults or teens. And then the other thing that I was actually doing is doing a lot of studies. And so I'm trained as a human sexuality researcher. So there's always really cool studies that are going on and folks wanting me to either lead the study or be like a research associate on the study. So it was a little bit of a mixed bag for me, but all in
Oh,
intimacy.
okay. All right. So you had some experience there. And then kind of what made you think about or start ideating around creating your own brand?
I think when I started to see the same frustrations in the field is when I just had this urge that I had to do something about it and that I had the grit to do it, that I had seen enough variations of it working with so many startups to do it myself. And I should probably also share so I am a trained sexologist. I have a master's in human sexuality, and that work itself can lead you to a lot of different like spaces, but we never talked about starting a company. Most folks end up going into academia or things like that. So it was, I would say, a big leap for me, but I had been wanting to do it for a couple of years before I actually did it.
So what year did you do it? What year did you actually, or at least start, I guess, in regards to creating?
I launched Bloomi in 2018. And the year before that, I was preparing, I was doing a lot of clean standard research, ingredient research, just preparing for it. And then I would say like the 2 years before that, I had been ideating around where would I want to do, like what product would I want to start with. And so there was a lot of brainstorming going on for a couple years.
And then so then your first product was the arousal oil your first product?
Yeah, so actually it's interesting, and this happens quite a lot in startup, but when we launched in 2018, we launched as an intimacy marketplace. And the reason for that is I had a lot of folks that were asking me for recommendations, like, okay, great, we had this workshop with you, and now we want, the book or the lube or the toy that you
Mm.
talked about. And so instead of continuing to send folks like five, six, seven different links all curated to the person, I was like, let me just put these together in a marketplace style.
Smart.
And again, like very ahead of its time, I think, where folks were like, there were very few clean intimacy brands 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But I feel like I found them all, I curated that. And then what happened is I didn't see any arousal oils on the market that were clean. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on that as the first product because I just learned that libido being low was the primary sexual complaint that folks would have, and we didn't have a great solution for it. So when we developed our first product, that was about 3 years ago. So it wasn't that long ago.
Not at
We
all.
pivoted the company then. And that's when we developed the full line and we ended up raising venture and all that good stuff.
Got it. So did you then shy away from the marketplace and just focused on your brand?
Yes, and we pivoted, and that transition did take about a year, about like 9 months to transition. I didn't want to let it go, but I had to because I saw how well our arousal oil was selling and just learned so much about the COGS and the margins. And really, like some of my early investors, they were right. They told me that the marketplace is going to be one business model, but when and if we decide to start creating our own product, that's like almost another business model. And it's been proven, it's been done with like Grove Collaborative or Goop, but the amount of capital that that requires, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to get that right.
Oh, wow. So did you have investors even at the early onset then, like with your first product?
Yes, we had what a lot of people call the friends and family round. There were some friends in there, and family in there, but it wasn't like, you know, I have wealthy aunts and uncles that just filled my round. I like hustled, and I ended up getting people that I didn't even realize were open to investing wrote $1,000 checks, $5,000 checks. That's how we did our early round.
Got it. I love that. I know Emil will talk later about their community piece, but I love the opportunity to kind of be a part of something, and growing and helping a brand with that.
Mm-hmm.
So then you say that, you decide that the arousal oil is kind of your first product. What did that look like when you brought it to market? Did you have, really high MOQs that you had to meet or minimum order quantities for people that don't know that definition? How did you actually launch it?
Okay, so the arousal oil, I wanted to get right. I wanted this to be a really beautiful formula, and I wanted it to be something that I could scale. And so what I ended up focusing on first was the formula, and I got a top formulator. I convinced her to do this with me for a little bit of equity. And I also got on board a clean beauty advisor who is really well known in the space now. And with the three of us, we had fun. It was kind of like a fun project where we got to innovate and talk about why this product was going to have certain fatty oils and aphrodisiacs, and a lot of research went into it. What we ended up doing is actually being able to launch small with components that were available in small quantities, with ingredients that were organic and sourced as locally as possible, but also available in larger quantities. Like we bought from third-party manufacturers already, where it was,
Okay.
So we started small scale, but with groups that could provide us with larger quantities. And that's how it started. I do remember when we got together and did like the final launch plans, we said, well, here we go. We'll see how it goes. And I remember it started getting picked up by the media, and we started selling them every minute.
What?
And I just remember, this was when Shopify, you know how they do that little, do you know the Shopify sound?
Yeah.
You got to purchase sound. It's like a little money to change sound.
Yeah, I know.
I remember I was with my husband and my kids, and it was COVID. COVID had just started. That was another thing. Like things just hit the fan. Like we launched this product in the beginning of COVID, but still felt like, people are going to want intimacy products. Maybe this will work.
Definitely during COVID, right?
Yes. So I remember with my husband, we were on a weekend getaway with family, and it was like a local drive from here. We go to Tahoe a lot. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, the app broke. There's something wrong with it. Like, it won't turn off. And he was like, no, babe, I think these are orders. And I was like, no, they're not orders. Like we don't get orders like that. And then it wouldn't stop. So we were on day 2, and I was just like, we got to get home. How am I going to fulfill these? Like, what is happening? And it's just because of, I don't know, people really loved it. And that was the beginning of me being like, okay, I can let go of the marketplace. This is just a pivot, and I need to hire, and I need more money, and all of the above.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's amazing too, that you didn't even believe that was real.
I thought it was just the app was glitchy, and something happened. I was like, oh my goodness, it's like not working anymore.
So I guess just to go back, how did you even get a formulator? Like, did you just coldly reach out? Like, how did you even connect to anybody to help you to kind of formulate it in the first place?
It was cold, but I like to say that all my cold emails are kind of warm. So what I end up doing, and I've done this with a lot of folks on my team, is I go out and I look for who are the brands that I like or the designers that I like or the websites that I love. I track down who that person is, and then I tell them how much I love their work and I would love to have them consider working with me part-time or on a fractional basis. So I tracked down the formulator of a brand that I loved, Tata Harper. She also worked at Ursa Major, and she works at top beauty brands. But I just reached out to her and I told her, and she was also my advisor, knew her. And so it was like a nice connection point where I was like, no, I love her work. I want to reach out to her already. So it just worked out. It was great. And I would say now at the stage that we're at, I can't do that as much, but I still love to like do research and reach out to the folks that I think would be great for our team or great for our project. So I still do that. My husband thinks it's very entrepreneurial of me. But yes, that's how we got the formulator.
No, that's a great nugget too, I think, for people to, I get a lot of questions on like, how do you start to create, like, I have the idea, but like, how do I get it started? How can I connect with people to help me do it? And it's really just about being, proactive, right? And getting out there, and how can I contact the people that I want to work with? So that's yes. Great. So you're in Tahoe, your phone's going off, you go home.
We need to go home.
You need to go home. So were you actually packaging them in your home? You're shipping it out from your home?
Yes. I was the only person on my team, and I was actually having my husband and my oldest daughter help me fulfill orders. So that's how it started. And when I hired like our first marketing person, she was like, Rebecca, you're so good at making this company feel much bigger because you told me you were going to route my application to someone to look at. I was like, yeah, that was my husband. I just didn't say who, because my husband is a marketing exec for like corporate companies. And he's just, he was like my pseudo co-founder, I like to say, in the beginning. So that's how that started. And I did know after we launched the product, that because it was COVID and things were shut down, we were going to have to figure out manufacturing quickly. And on the website, just figure out like how to continue to take orders. There was just a lot to do. And I think that's when I was excited. I was excited to see what else we could do.
So did you actually hire your first hire the very first year of launch?
Yes, it was a little bit, if you count advisors as fractional folks, like that was like my first extension of the team. Like those were my first people who were working with me. And the very early advisors, I think, were kind of like fractional employees. And then from there, yes, I hired a marketing person. I brought on my co-founder around that time. And that's how the team sort of started to evolve. We're still a small team, which is surprising to folks, but that's how it started.
Great. So you're shipping out of your home. What were kind of the first reactions from consumers? Was there any feedback that you took and had to make any changes to the product? Was it, all positive? Like, what were people saying about it?
I actually didn't even know how to collect good, like, user feedback because I was so stretched thin for time. So we ended up putting a quick little survey post-purchase, and that started showing me that I needed to really spend the time getting post-consumer information. Because for some people, the product was arriving frozen. Like we had a few folks in Canada that were ordering, and they were ordering in the middle of winter. And I was like, I don't know how to account for that. Like, how do I deal with a liquid not getting frozen when it's going to like an area where it's 0 degrees cold, or whatever? Right. Yes. So that was like one thing. The solution couldn't just be thaw your product. The other thing I learned is my initial packaging was not good. It was too flimsy, not a material or like a carton that I could be proud of. Like, oh, it's sustainably made. I just like printed like 1,000 cartons from like an online company. And the design also, I think I did the design myself. I realized that we needed a logo, like just stuff like that. I wanted it to start to feel more cohesive and like more elevated. That's what I wanted because it is a pretty elevated product. If you look at it, it's in a really pretty glass bottle. It's like a light turquoise color. It's super silky, oily. So I just needed the branding to match. So that is a constant process. We to this day still work on brand. Like I still lead brand, but we'll get to this, but after we launched in larger retailers, I realized, oh, wow, we need to make packaging updates again. So one hard lesson that I've learned is before you launch somewhere, you should do the research to understand why competitors are using hot colors, bright colors, big font. Like there are reasons for this. So I have learned the hard way each time that what I think is pretty is not necessarily what's best for selling. And D2C versus retail shelves also vary, right?
Yep. Yeah, completely. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. So once you were selling, I guess, one, you said that you were picking up a lot of like awareness through marketing channels. Was that something, were you guys doing any sort of, and I know it was just you, so I don't know if you were doing any media about the brand, like how did people actually know about it? Was it initially just the community that you'd already kind of created?
Yes, initially it was just the community I created. And just like I told you that I like would find the formulator or the advisor or whoever that I felt like I wanted to be in my corner and work with me on things, I did the same thing with press. So I think this is why the arousal oil had so much success early on. I contributed and I like was a commentator basically for a lot of different articles and publications. And I wrote things for free for some of like the major outlets. So I was writing, I think I had a sex column at the time for with Well and Good. I started contributing to Birdie. And so it was just me reaching out to the editors whose work I loved and I read and said, hey, I love this topic. I would love to be a resource for you. I actually am happy to pitch you a few ideas that I think would do really well with this audience. And so when we launched the arousal oil, it did get picked up by groups who I had already wrote for. And I did tell them, obviously, the product was launching, but you never know who's going to write about it. Like sometimes they tell you and sometimes you get a heads up. But I think it was just a little bit of a snowball impact. And it was like a little bit of the reflection of the work I had put in just to naturally build those relationships.
That's what I was thinking is you kind of were doing the work without even knowing that you were doing the work, like preparing for this that, hadn't even been created yet. So I think that, that's pretty amazing and shows that you were kind of already on the right path, right, for your life and your growth.
Yeah. And the thing I'll say too is I think that because I am such an educator at heart, I want people to have good content. Like that's my North Star. And so the products are just a byproduct of that. If I know people are struggling and reading about libido and being able to have intimacy time with their partner because we're all stressed and tired, I know that this product is naturally going to weave into what they want to learn more about. And so I think that's why people end up liking Bloomi. I think that's how a lot of people find Bloomi, because they read something I wrote or something the team wrote about common intimacy struggles.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think even when I was looking on your social, like the way that you talk about it just is so like easy to understand, like easy to have conversation with. And I know you talked about, prior, especially, even when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of talk, about kind of sexual wellness. So, I was even learning things just looking on your social media, because there isn't a lot of conversation, even with your closest girlfriends around things like that. So it's nice to have a platform that you feel safe and like, that you're getting the real information, right?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think that one of my gifts is being able to take very embarrassing topics and just make it more wellness focused and not as embarrassing for people. And being Latina, like culturally, this isn't true of a lot of cultures, but we just don't really talk about intimacy. It's more, like kind of like hush hush. It's a private thing, but the issue with it being a completely private thing like that is then we have so many questions when we're adults and we're not equipped to have like great sexual communication and things that are important as adults too, even before adulthood. But that's where I feel like, yes, I'm excited to be talking about these very taboo topics, like at the dinner table, on national TV. Like I'm all for it.
I love that. And I think it just allows for other people to feel, oh, I can talk about this, right? I can be comfortable with it. So great.
That's my hope.
That's true. So going back to product. So you started with just the arousal oil to start, and then you added additional items kind of in your assortment. What kind of
Yes.
what kind of sparked that idea of, okay, I have this one item, but now I want to expand and have a collection?
Okay, so this is a great question because I think when I started, I knew that I was eventually going to have to create like a line, but I was so laser focused on the arousal oil that I actually had a hard time figuring out what next product to do. So I asked people, and you know that
Mm.
post-consumer questionnaire, I asked them like what they would be interested in next, and from there we made a massage oil, which I also know today, I don't think I understood it at the time, but it's really great when you can use similar ingredients and packaging
Mm-hmm.
and reuse components. So that was really helpful for me starting off early. But then I also learned from my customers that the product was not as accessible from a financial standpoint. I think at the time it was $48. And so I wanted to then analyze like, do I really want to go into this, this price point? What is this price point? Because this is such a new category. Or do I want to go more mass and masstige? And I talked to a lot of consultants. I ended up talking to someone who I brought onto the team who worked at Target, decided mass and masstige was what I wanted. So we ended up creating a full collection to pitch to Target because that's where my consumer shopped.
Mm.
I asked them like, where's the number one place that you buy your wellness products? And it was Target at the time. It's interesting because it's shifted, which we can talk about, but that's where I wanted to focus. And so that was a different innovation process because I couldn't use the same ingredients and glass bottles,
Mm-hmm.
and my margins were super tight. And so there was a lot of lessons learned there, but we worked with a formulator who is also great. We worked with a small team. We designed on our own the packaging, but it was great. And I think from there is where I saw like the true in and like the day to day of creating products and cogs and FinOps. And that's where I feel like it became a real company, even though it's been a real company.
Yeah. No, that's great. And you kind of already went ahead to my kind of next question and thoughts were, okay, you're selling direct to consumer. What made you even think about going into retail? And did you have a retail strategy? And it sounds like you did. Target was kind of your North Star.
Yes, I wanted to focus on what did I need to create that I was uniquely good at creating that I could pitch to Target. And when we pitched Target, I remember that day when we had that line review. I was so sick to my stomach. I've never felt like that. I remember I wore like a little bit of red for good luck. Like it was just, I'm very like intuitive and a little superstitious. So I just felt my body like wanting the meeting to go so right. But
Right.
I was trying to make sure that I stayed focused on like what I was wanting her to get from our interaction. And I wanted her to know that one, I'm a sexologist. I know this category, and I made recommendations on what they should call the planogram because it used to be family planning. I recommended things like sexual wellness, pleasure, intimate health. Like I remember giving her suggestions, and some of those things have been implemented at Target, which is really cool to see. But I wanted to make sure that I left that meeting knowing that we were ready if they said yes. And if they said not yet, I would come back to them. So that was the strategy for like being ready for the line review. And mind you, like I know you know this, but that means that by the time we had that meeting, we already had manufacturing lined up, R&D, probably three-quarters of the way done, the team ready, operations, packaging, like everything was like ready in case it was a yes. And
Mm.
then when we heard yes, and we're going to give you more stores than you asked for, I think there, I wish I would have paused and I would have asked other founders and a little bit more like asking more folks like how would they approach that situation, because we ended up launching in more doors than we were expecting, which is very, 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 very exciting.
Yeah.
But it requires a lot of capital
Mm-hmm.
to really sustain and market for that level. And so that was a tough learning lesson that we definitely like navigated. But it was interesting to see how my peers on the shelf had maybe 10 times more funding than we did if they were an emerging brand. So that was very eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I think that one, like having all of those things set up at the beginning before even going in and pitch is ultra important because a lot of people don't have that, right? They go in thinking that where they are today is enough to be able to launch into mass. And you do need to change a lot of things in order to be able to support, such a higher, level of purchase orders and communication and marketing and all of the things. So it's great to hear that you had it set up, but set up for smaller stores than you actually were going to go out to, right? Then they.
Even our opening order, there was no way for us to fund that on our own. And so we did try to get like PO financing, AR financing, a line of credit. We couldn't get anything without a personal guarantee. So I had to put everything on the line. I put my house on the line. I did personal lines of credit, personal loans. Like I made it happen because I trusted that we could do it. It was just very high stakes.
Yeah. So in hindsight, would you have said, hey, you know what, can I actually start in less stores, test it out, and then grow from there? When you talk about kind of wishing you did something a little differently there?
Yes, except I've also learned that with every retailer and every buyer, they have kind of like pre-sorted planograms where you either fit in what they want or you don't. And so I don't know if our buyer would have accepted fewer stores, but she might have. I think we should have paused and thought about it a little bit more. But I do think now that's the advice that I give founders. If you are considering mass retail, masstige retail, I 100% recommend that you start as small as possible. But even when you're going to start as small as possible, you have to be okay with not being profitable for at least 1 to 2 years. And I think that blows people's minds. Like, what do you mean I'm not going to make money? It's a huge order. It's like, it's a huge order, but you're going to have chargebacks. You're going to have shortages. You're going to have like all of the things that you do not learn if you don't come from the retail space. I was like, so shortage, that's a very nice way of saying people are going to steal the product. Okay. Like, and is it just our category? No, this is like a retail thing that you just need to account for.
Right.
It was a whole thing.
Yeah. I think even understanding that, yes, a benefit of being in retail stores is that you're going to get this huge purchase order, right? And you're going to get funds up front versus, direct to consumer where you're getting, a sale per person. However, you're not getting that up front. Like you're not getting that money.
Right.
When the PO is sent, nor even months prior for you to have enough money to manufacture the product. So there's, learning this there too. Just, in some cases it's 90 days from the date that you deliver the product that you're actually going to get paid for the inventory that you're delivering.
Yeah. I will say one thing that I'm proud of that we did on our team is we did negotiate terms with every retailer in a way that I felt like supported our growth. So there's things that I think maybe it was me being naive, but I would see fees on there and I would ask, like, can we get that waived? And, or what, can you like talk to me about alternatives for this? Like, why is this here? Like, I remember asking questions and our broker laugh sometimes and say, Rebecca, we've never really asked for that, or that's not a standard thing. And I would just go back to them and push them like, but can we ask for this? And they're like, well, technically you can ask for whatever you want.
Right.
So I literally redlined the whole contract. And I said to my broker, out of all of the things that I redlined, help me pick like the top 3 things we should be asking for that you think will make the most impact. And they said, we'll do this, but we've actually never asked for this. And everything we asked for, we got, you guys.
Really?
So,
That's amazing. I mean, definitely ask the question, right? All they can do is say no, but at least you've put it out there and tried to get the best, contract and negotiation that you feel is best for your company and your brand. So that's really great advice, I think, especially to get those actually changed and no one had asked before. So that's really amazing.
At least not through this broker, but
Yeah.
I think I will say this, like if you're going to go into a retailer like Target, and we're also in CVS, if you're going to go into a large retailer, I would say you should have a broker, but that's like a whole thing of how do you choose a broker? What are the terms for your broker? But I feel like they have been like an extension of our team and so great. So even though I might be naive as a founder going into this retailer, I've hopefully done enough due diligence to know like this is a great partner for us. Our customers want us to be here. This is how it works. This is how we're going to market. And my broker can be a sounding board. So even though I redlined that contract and I said, these are the things that I would like to discuss, help me pick the top three, I wouldn't necessarily know the top three. And that's where they come in very, very handy.
Yeah.
To guide that conversation.
Right. Because they have the experience as they've been working with a lot of other brands on getting those brands in stores, right?
Yes.
So I mean, I feel like I'm going to get the same answer, but how did you find your broker?
Okay. So this is a good question. I found our first broker through a referral from a Target consultant. And I will say, I think that the referral was a great referral, but not for our stage. Okay. And when you're into the partnership with the broker, we realized that we were too small for them. They were too big of an entity to like be able to provide us with what we needed. And the process of moving from them to a more boutique broker that understood emerging brands and could vouch for the things we wanted to do, like that process was really painful. It like slowed our business for at least like 6 months while we transitioned. Our buyers did not appreciate the process, but understood the process. And the new broker that we had, I found them. So we did an RFP process and vetted, and I think it was more of a traditional search, not just me, picking a brand that I liked. But this was, we hired an ops strategy person to run a process and actually find like who would be the best fit for us. And they have been great for like our ops partner, for like our 3PL.
Okay.
And our broker. And the reason that I'm saying both is because the very first time our broker was also our 3PL. So we had to separate those when we transitioned out. And so that process that we ran had to have two different pieces. We had to have one broker and separately we wanted a 3PL.
Got it. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that there's kind of certain levels of a broker. So you really just shouldn't go out and choose any broker. You need to do your due diligence, it sounds like, making sure that it's one that's specific to your needs, whether you're just starting out, whatever level, your brand is in regards to growth, right?
Yeah, and also that you don't have, they probably wouldn't take you if they have a competitor in the planogram. Some do, and they have ways of dealing with that, so there's no conflict of interest, but that's important. What size brand do they work with? How will they support your growth? And then there's so many things that you need to, how do I say it? Like you need to be able to also tap into that. Now I'm so grateful that our broker also has this. And this is why I was asking the questions I asked, but it's like the marketing, the internal marketing channels within each retailer, like, do they have connections and services for that? If we need a packaging update, do they have designers in-house that can help us refresh that? Or there's like a million things like keyword searches. Do they have keyword capability in-house? So that kind of stuff I did not know to ask in the beginning.
Interesting. But you were able to then find one that really made sense for your business and kind of where you were at the time.
Yes, I love our broker. I love them. They're great. They've been amazing.
That's great. So when you were pitching to Target, kind of what did that look like? Like, what did your pitch look like? What were kind of key components that were part of what helped kind of them understand the brand and, get connected and want to bring it in?
Great question. And I wish I would have asked folks this question, but I had this Target consultant who was kind of like a good guide. What I focused on with the pitch was what made the brand special, who I was, and like how I could provide value, not only to our brand, but to Target. And then we showed the products and what made them special and stand out. Basically like why they needed this brand and why they don't have a brand like us on shelf yet, which I still feel like we're a very unique brand in even more ways now. Like we're the only Latina owned brand in the category.
Yeah.
one of two clean brands. And by clean, I think sometimes there's like, back and forth on what the term means, but we mean like specifically designed for intimate skin, no fragrances, no glycerin, no dyes, like things that irritate intimate skin. And we really need to be careful about using on those sensitive areas. Like we don't allow any of that on our products. And then at the end, we talked about like what we were going to be able to do for marketing and what we were hoping they could do with us. So we even mocked up like, this is what an ad on your website would look like, because we knew what channels those were going to be. And then we shared, here's our community. We are highly engaged. We have this email subscriber list that's growing, and the events we're going to do, and we're going to do this event for the launch, like just basically like what the marketing plan was going to look like in collaboration with them and also on our own. But even though it's both, I would say Target is very excited when you can drive the consumer there and you're going to bring an incremental visit to their store, or they're going to ask for your brand. Like your brand is sticky and consumers want your brand. So I think that was the bulk of the deck. Also, I would also like share with folks, these calls are extremely fast. I have had line reviews with other retailers that maybe are longer, or there's more chit chat, but these are very quick. And I'm surprised because we usually have 30 minutes, but we'll have to finish in 20. And that will be kind of the time we have. So 20 minutes is what I would like suggest you use as like your max time that you want to have in a deck. And we always like to share the deck afterwards with our buyers.
So it was a virtual kind of conversation that you had?
Oh, yes. That was another thing. So it was virtual. It was kind of the tail end of COVID. So buyers were meeting with brands in person, but it just depends on the buyer. Ours was doing all virtually. And even though I see, there's some founders that will fly out to headquarters to have quarterly meetings or line review meetings. It just depends on the person and who's leading the category.
Yeah.
I have met buyers from CVS. They're incredible. I love them. Shout out to all of them on their team, because I feel like they do a lot of in-person things. But for some reason, I just feel like it varies from retailer to retailer.
Yeah. My question around like it being virtual was that with these products, did you send your products beforehand? Did they actually have it in hand so they could sample it and kind of test it out?
Yes, we sent all product in advance and made sure that it arrived to her and her team. And then the thing that was a little tricky is, I mentioned this, that we were in R&D for a lot of the product. And so the samples that we had were not final samples. And the way that we kind of talked about that is on the meeting, we explained like we have shared the formula samples and we shared like carton examples, like as much as we had. What we wanted to align with her at the time was what were the most important SKUs for her so that we could prioritize those. And so essentially it's like we kind of co-built our line with Target. And I still do this now. This is like I don't know if it's like a hack or if it's just how everybody else does it, but I always over innovate. And I want that conversation with that retailer to be very authentic and say, here's what I think you need on the shelf, but I also feel like this product could work and this is what the data show. So what do you think? Like, what would you like to see? And I find that that's been a really good approach to getting on shelf.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think all of the components that you talked about when it comes to creating that pitch are all the important things, right? What is the brand? How is it going to benefit the retailer? How are you going to drive new consumers in, right? Because the goal is that the brand is going to bring in new traffic and not just cannibalize something that's already on shelf. And the marketing piece, just giving a preview as to what you're going to do, not to just, grow and drive awareness for your brand, but actually drive the traffic into store. So I think that definitely, I'm sure, was a big piece of it where you were able to kind of nail all of those things. And then lastly, the conversation that you're talking about with collaboration on assortment. I think it just allows for retailers to feel like this is special for their consumers, right? It's not just a product lineup that's available for anyone, but it's really specific to the needs of their consumers. So So that was great. That was great. Was that all? Did your broker kind of help you kind of create that thought process, or was it something you already had in your mind?
We actually, the timing of us is we ended up having the meeting with our buyer at the same time that we were signing on the first broker. And so they participated, but they weren't guiding us yet.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I think they definitely have a ton of experience. So they would have like flagged anything that didn't make sense. But I think we felt pretty good about the strategy and the deck.
Cool. And then so then you have this pitch. You go back long before you got the call or the email or whatever that communication was to say, hey, you're launching in Target, and oh, by the way, it's more stores than we initially than you initially thought.
So the call was virtual, and I remember after the call ended, I was very emotional because I was just proud of myself for getting to that point, whether it happened or not, because it just means so much. Being first generation, like knowing very detailed stories about how my family came here to try to really pursue this American dream, and I felt like I was starting to see some of this. So it was just extra special for me. I think after the call and after I like
Got
came
yourself
back to my
together.
body, yeah, got myself together. I'm doing the thing. Got myself together. I was like, okay, I have a lot of work to do. So we just continue to prepare, continue to be ready. And then I think it was a few months later, they reached out to us and they said, this is not your official award, but this is what we're thinking. And we could see, you know, the faces, the number of faces. So some of them were going to have multiple facings, and we could see which SKUs and how many stores. And what was surprising is they did take what we projected to be our best sellers, and we did a good job. They actually were the best sellers, but there were little things that I didn't realize were that could have been optimized for us. And we can come back to it, but it has to do with pricing. But after that, I would say a few months had passed when we got the unofficial note. We actually used that to go out and raise venture. We went to venture funds and we said, hey, we're going to be launching in Target. This is the unofficial award that we're getting, and this is what we're seeing that we're going to be launching with. And we can talk about fundraising all day, but fundraising for me has always been eye-opening at how challenging it is for reasons that a lot of folks seem to not really understand. But I think it's because when we hear about fundraising, it's kind of like a founder goes out, pitches, comes back and has the capital they need. But I've just encountered so much hesitation as a founder in this category. And as a woman and as a founder of color, that it's just known that we are highly underserved, underfunded. And so that process for me was like the first time I was trying to raise 2 million, and I think we got to 1.1, which is how I ended up doing all of this personal like loan and all of the things we needed. And I ended up from there feeling like, okay, we at least have everything that we need to get going. We started manufacturing orders. We got our official award. We went back to funds and we said, now this is the official award. It's exactly what we told you guys it was going to be. We got a little bit more capital from that. And then we prepared to get product in the warehouse, like by the date we needed to get it there. I think we ended up getting 98% of the product in on time. And we were really annoyed that final 2%, it wasn't really our fault, but you have to plan for that stuff.
Right.
So that the timeline was pretty quick. I think from the time we got our award, we had to have product in-house in their distribution centers in 3 months, 3.5 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. So quick turnaround, really. But you were already prepared. You were already preparing for that.
Yes, you can't wait to manufacture when you get your award letter, which is how like it's the complexities of managing the finances and the timelines. You definitely need to have someone that has a lot of expertise with that.
Yeah. You were talking a little bit about funding, and I know you were pretty open on your social about kind of the challenges when it comes to a female in the, you know, and even hearing specifically in this category on getting funding and how different it is versus kind of our male counterparts. So how did you kind of navigate that, and kind of any takeaways that you would kind of give people in regards to if they're looking at that avenue in growing their brand?
Yes, I think that raising venture is such a great way to propel your company and scale your company. I usually tell founders that are considering it to just make sure that they know that that's the route they have to take and want to take, because not all companies are VC backable. And I knew that if we decided to take venture, we were going to be on a more hyper growth path and we were going to have to raise again and again. So I think just knowing what you're signing up for is important. And the other thing I would say is, I think it's not my job to necessarily explain all the time why being a founder of color adds another layer of making it challenging. It's almost like explaining like why it's challenging to be a person of color. But I feel like if I don't, then I'm not going to make a ripple effect, and I'm not going to help the community and the ecosystem understand from my lens. And so I do it and I talk about it, but it's taxing. And I think that the reason that it's taxing in general is because we as women of color tend to be overly prepared. So I go into every single pitch overly prepared. And as much as you tell me don't over prepare, I will over prepare. Because if you ask me, like, I already know who you are. I know who you invest in. I know like as much personal stuff. I know how to pronounce your name correctly. I know my numbers. I know our growth trajectory. I know the questions that are going to like stumble you and how I want to like approach those. And I think that has served me well in some ways.
Okay.
Where I feel ready, and they can, like, investors can tell like, oh, you're smart and you've done your homework and you're not just a sexologist. You actually know your business and you know your numbers. I have to, though, on the other hand, like kind of give myself grace, because I shouldn't have to like, what's the word? I shouldn't have to like over credential myself.
Yeah.
I have to talk about like, oh, I went to Stanford and I went to Cal, and I shouldn't have to do those things. But I just find that I am a non-traditional founder to most investors. Most investors in the ecosystem, they're white men, and they don't do this on purpose, but they tend to have biases. And so those biases usually mean that they are pulling in investments and investing companies that come from their network. And usually that's not my network. And so then when I cold email or I get a founder intro that I've worked very hard to finally get, right?
Right.
Because I've talked to them, I follow up with them. 6 months later, I tell them, okay, I'm ready. Can you do? So all of the preparation, I think, goes a long way. But then by the time you're having the conversations, some folks would kind of create like kind of like a joking matter, like, oh my gosh, you're creating a sexual wellness company, or that whole cliche of like asking their wives. I get that all the time. Okay, well, we don't really use these products. These are not really for us. And I have to pause and say, actually, these products are for all bodies. I intentionally wanted to make sure that the products were made for just intimate skin and intimacy. So you actually can use the products, and you don't even have to personally use them, but I invite you to open the package, feel the material, like all of this stuff.
All the things, right?
All the things. And so, it's just a tedious process, because usually like immigrant founders, first gen founders, we don't have the same networks. And I've worked incredibly hard to build my network. So I do feel like I have a solid network, but it's not a network that I can tap into from generations of like my family being in business, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think it's hard when you don't have those commonalities. I think you mentioned something about like, so many deals are being done on the golf course, and I don't like to golf, right?
Oh my gosh, the whole golf conversation. Can we talk about this? Okay. So I just did a executive education program at Dartmouth's business school.
Okay.
And we had this very charged conversation about the golf course. So half of my cohort thinks that if you are a founder and you're raising venture and you know the deals are happening on the golf course, you need to be on the golf course. You already know this, and you
need to learn how to golf.
You have to do it. And then the other half of the cohort was saying, if that's not what you naturally need to do, you should bring investors to you, and you should not change who you are. Yes, not conform.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
And so my mind on this is split. And the irony, Roberta, is that I live on a golf course. And so I don't golf. My husband doesn't golf, but I kind of I'm of the mindset that if I'm invited, I'm going to go. I like the clinics. I like where you can go and sort of practice. But recently, a really incredible woman at EA offered for me to come because they have like a golf simulator. And she said she built it for her company and like the women of the company who were hesitant to golf. So I see the movement of women wanting to support each other to become more comfortable. Mm-hmm. But long story short, like deals are happening on the golf course. Okay. So yes, I am more open to it now. I was very resistant before.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that too. Like, do I want to kind of be different from who I naturally am? Or, but I would imagine it is a little bit harder when you're not out there and you have to find other modes in order to like connect and, get those conversations. So that's just really funny, but it's interesting that you now may be flipping to the other side and maybe a golfer.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll ever be an avid golfer. Never say never, but I just think that you got to find the balance for you. And if you hate something, don't do it, right? But if you are indifferent and you know that it could be beneficial, then I see the value.
Yeah, and then maybe you try it. Yeah. No, that's so funny. Thanks for sharing that. So going back to Target, so you have your pitch, 3 months later, you have product in the distribution center, you finally get to launch. So, a lot of people think, okay, I got my product on shelf. It's a yes, I'm done. Sales are just going to happen, right? I've kind of met my goal. Yeah. What did it look like for you in regards to what did marketing drive? Did you see sales right away? Did you have, conversations with your merchant that you had to, do anything differently?
Yes. So the launch is always very, very exciting. There's so much energy around that. We actually had a really nice, intimacy launch event where we had it in LA, and we did it in partnership with We All Grow, which is a community focused for, the Latina community. We ended up making it basically for women of color focused. And we ended up having pleasure zones. We celebrated Target by having all the items available for gifts. We invited influencers, media. That was a really fun, successful way, I think, to celebrate and to have some traction in terms of allowing the community to know, hey, we're officially in the store. Shop us, talk about it with your friends. And I think it was fun. So I think that was successful. I think what also worked well is we had already built a network of folks. So we had, ongoing, the traditional, your email, your SMS, your social, those things we already had going. And so I feel like that was very helpful for us, that we had a really engaged community. We had a lot of our ambassadors that were going into Target and doing, Target hauls and shop at Target videos. That was fun. And that doesn't stop. We still do that today. All of the things that I mentioned. The thing that I feel was eye-opening for me is that within my team, there were differences of opinion on how sales should go. And this is when I think my leadership style really developed a lot. And I think that what I learned is you can't overly trust any one person's opinion. You as a team need to work together to to align on KPIs for your company. I had someone who was on our team that I ended up letting go because their perspective was, if we're in the retailer should be helping us sell, and we should have incremental growth just because we're there. That was their experience. And so I trusted that a little bit, but then I had someone else in, kind of from a different perspective saying, we have to drive, we have to do it, it's on us. And so I think that's where I realized, let's look at the data. What's the data showing? And what it was showing is that customers loved certain SKUs and they didn't love other SKUs as much. And, in retail, it's all about velocity. And so I learned the hard way that there's some SKUs that are going to stay on the shelf for years to come as long as you continue to drive that growth. And there's other SKUs that are going to come out within the first year.
Yeah.
So we had that experience and realized that we sell intimacy. We tried feminine hygiene. It didn't work in the first year. And we did, I think it was like 100 stores with them in feminine hygiene. But our buyer was confused when they would go into Target and they would see Bloomi has products in the intimacy section and in the feminine hygiene section. And even like the store team would mix up the SKUs in the two sections. So that was a hard lesson learned. And so we just consolidated and we said, we're going to drop feminine hygiene. We're going to focus on intimacy. And I think even today, I would say there's still strategies that I think we're always trying things. I think it's always important to do partnerships and your outreach to your community. You have to keep growing your own community though. And I feel like in the beginning, we definitely prioritized Target over everything. And today we do not do that. Today we have to find a nice balance. And I got this advice from a founder who's very successful now in retail. And she said, no one retailer should be more than 20% of your business. And so I have been working since we launched to make that be sort of more of a balanced approach. We diversified. We are now in CVS and Amazon, and D2C is growing for us. So that's kind of how we look at it today, where it is really important to nurture every retailer, but no one retailer should be like your only focus of your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even if you have a new buyer that comes in and they change up the assortment and they discontinue you, that was your only kind of source. So you definitely need to make sure you have multiple ways in order to drive sales and, get consumers.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. So when you did launch, I know you kind of talked earlier about you made some changes when it came to packaging and things like that. Were those made before launch or were those made based on kind of feedback once it was on shelf?
We made changes right before we went into production. And that was from some user feedback. But what we noticed is that, are you familiar with drawdowns?
No.
So when you're picking your colors and you have everything mocked up so pretty on the screen, your packaging looks this color and it looks great. Once you print it, it's sort of set. So we did an in-between step where we printed drawdowns on the actual carton that we were going to be using.
Okay.
So we decided instead of white paper, we were going to use a sugarcane carton, which is paperless carton basically, and is part of our story of sustainability.
Got it.
We did not realize that change was going to make the colors so different. And so right before we went into production, we made some changes to the branding. But when we launched, we were happy with it. It looked great. The only thing that was, I think, unexpected is not every store will have your full assortment unless if you agree to that. And so some stores had one SKU. Some stores had 4 SKUs. And so it varied. And sometimes our colors, the way that we picked them, we didn't love how they looked when it was like 2 items.
All together.
We liked it when it was all together. Yeah. So that was a hard lesson. I think that it wasn't, a deal breaker. It didn't impact sales necessarily, but for the brand, we just wanted to make sure we were more thoughtful about, we always want a brand block. Like today, we only have a brand block at Target. So we only move forward if we can have that. And so I think that's important for brands to mock up, like print your final packaging in your colors, in your paper, put it on the shelf. And if that's the only combination you're going to have, great. But if there's a chance that maybe 2 SKUs will be in store, do those 2 SKUs look nice together?
No, that's a really good call out. So then like from a pricing perspective too, did you have to change retailing? Was that in alignment to kind of what the balance of the kind of the set looked like?
So with pricing, I think we've always done a really good job. We've done a lot of research beforehand when we're developing a product and what we want the price to be and making sure that all of that is going to align the whole way through. But one thing that I learned is that if you have two SKUs that are similar to each other and they're two different prices, you are going to cannibalize one of your items. So we had two lubricants at Target, and like the community that knows this, they know what I'm talking about. We had to remove our oil-based lubricant from Target, which was a sad decision, but we were able to swap in new innovation. So it was fine. But we had our water-based lube and our oil-based lube next to each other, and the oil-based lube was $1 more. And so we saw that reflected in sales. Everybody wanted the one that was $1 less. And was water-based. I will say water-based is more versatile, so that's part of it too. But one thing I would advise folks to think about is it's not just about your pricing against your peers and how you want that to work out, but also your pricing against your own products and making sure that it's a nice balance.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. I think the one takeaway from hearing you is just the fact that you're always making changes and iterations based on what it looks like, what the customer is saying, kind of what your sales are reflecting. So it's not, you don't have the mindset that, you went in with the perfect assortment and the perfect pricing and the perfect everything, but you're definitely making changes. And I think that's important to continue to grow too and gain incremental sales.
Yeah, I would say until even big brands innovate and change and update. So don't be afraid to make the updates, and usually we get a lot of clarity by polling our audience.
Yeah. So when you did launch, I saw where you took your whole family into Target to kind of see you on shelf. What did that feel like? Like the emotion, I can't even imagine.
I don't know why. I was like nervous, and I was obviously extremely proud and excited, but I wanted my family to come because this is a very, I would say, like non-traditional taboo thing to see your family where it's like your parents and your kids, so it's multi-generational in the intimacy section. I do realize that that's not like the same as if we would have gone to the food section or, I understand that. But what I wanted people to see is like, I want this to be more normal where we go shopping in whatever category and it's not embarrassing. I didn't want to like reinforce those issues that we have in the category. But then also I kind of talked about this a little bit, being first generation and knowing how much my family has, like how hard they've worked. And of course, like I've worked incredibly hard too, but just knowing their stories of how they came to the US and like how much they sacrificed everything. And my grandma, like what it took for her to bring her kids here, like it was just like a culmination of seeing like multi-generational work and support on a shelf to me.
Yeah.
It's ironic because it's like a fun device or a water-based lubricant. Like I know what these products are. They're fun products, but it was just extremely meaningful and sentimental. That moment with my dad when he gave me a hug, I don't know why I lost it. I was keeping it together, but once he hugged me, I started crying. That moment continues to go viral. And it's like, I wouldn't have expected that, but I think people can just
feel the emotion. They could feel the emotion.
Yeah, I just couldn't keep it together with him. Because it's like when you're on the verge of tears and then a parent or a loved one will say like, what's the matter?
Yeah.
Or like they give you a hug. Oh,
everything just comes out.
Yes, it just came out.
Oh my gosh. I think too, you kind of mentioned it, but you are the first Latina founder to be in the sexual wellness aisle at Target, right? Which is, that I think is also just super impactful and brings the emotion too, because you're leading what's future to come, where there's going to be so many more, right? You're the first to launch, and I think you're just helping to kind of drive the path into just even more founders feeling comfortable into going into other categories that maybe they traditionally don't go into.
Yeah, I would hope that especially other founders of color, Latina, they see that there's a path and that there needs to be more representation, and they feel that inspiration. And at the same time, what I do like to share is that being the first is very challenging, because it's normally it's usually the person that ends up having a lot of barriers and red tape and workarounds and a lot of failed experiences. We've had a lot of failure with retail as well. Like there's so many highs, but there's also lows. And so I think I am proud that there's been so much growth and lessons learned. I will like caution founders that even though there's a celebratory moment like that where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm the first X person to do this thing at retail. At the end of the day, corporate's initiatives and how conservative a retailer may or may not be aligned with continuing to increase that. And so I say it's just like, sometimes it's part of the strategy for a retailer. And I'm not specifically talking about any one retailer, but I think that what I have learned is I value being Latina and bringing that special secret, like not secret sauce, but special like edge to what I offer in a planogram or in a retailer.
Yeah.
But not every retailer is going to appreciate that or care about that.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it's cool to be woman owned and have that logo on your packaging. Get all of your credit, get all of your flowers,
Yeah.
but don't expect that everyone is going to call that out and celebrate it the way that you will.
Yeah. I think it's important though as well to find those retailers that, which it sounds like you have, that do that, right? That are like helping to amplify you and grow the brand and feel like you're important and a differentiator in the set. And I think secondly, once you are in there and you prove your sales, that is the next kind of, you know, opportunity to continue to grow and catapult outside of, you know, being the first of a specific, you know, demographic. So, and it seemed like you're proving that. I mean, I went to Target last night to look at the assortment and I can show you I took like a video, but you are pretty much sold out, which, you know, is great because
great
right,
and frustrating.
Right, exactly. But I mean, it's definitely great to see. Is it playing? I just kind of spanned and it was literally just the one product left. So it's great to see. I mean, your community is definitely getting out there and shopping, and new consumers are out there as well. So that was, I thought, exciting to see.
That is, it's like one of those things that's like frustrating for a founder. It's like, what do you mean we're out of stock? But it's also like so nice to know that people are buying.
Yeah.
But that's like, you know, operational nuances all the time. Like it's not for lack of effort that we try to stay in stock.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just have to, you know, it's always ever changing too, right? In regards to performance levels and what's happening in sales and things like that.
Yes.
So just as we kind of wrap it up here, kind of what is next for your business? Any upcoming product launches, expansions, plans that you can share?
Yes. So we're always innovating. And I feel like if you're not already connected to Bloomi, we do a lot of community surveys. And for anyone that does those surveys, we do like a gift or a free $20. Like we tend to be really thankful to our community when they help us with product innovation. And so all that to say, the products that are launching are community requested products that are going to be coming out. And we'll be launching them D2C first. I recommend everybody always launch D2C first. Get all of the learnings and kinks out and then pitch it to retail. And so we're first going to be launching D2C. We have something exciting that's going to be launching at the top of the year. We actually don't have any more launches through the holidays. We're just going to focus on really fun holiday campaigns. But next year, there will be some really exciting launches. We surprisingly, like people, when we ask, do you want us to go outside of intimacy? The answer is always no. Give me the intimacy products. No, I just want intimacy. So we're staying in our lane and we're doing what we do best. We do have a really exciting media segment that's going to be coming out for Hispanic Heritage Month. Hispanic Heritage Month is September 15 to October 15. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of celebrating the brand happening this month, and we'll take it. Everyone should check out other Latina and Latino brands this month. And then what else? Next year for us is a big year where, as a business, we're excited for the growth. We do have the opportunity to go into another big retailer.
Oh, wow.
We are exploring that opportunity and understanding what that could be. And we're continuing to listen to our customer to see where they shop and what products they would want to have in that retailer. So that's exciting. And I think just in terms of like what's coming up for the team, people are always surprised how lean of a team we have. So I am very much looking forward to hiring and getting over this wave of growth that we're going through right now. It is a tough time in the economy. It is a tough time for a lot of brands. We've seen a little bit of that slowdown in some areas. And I feel like it's just exciting to see that I'm seeing the support still for, the community and the need that we have. And then lastly, I'll say we have a lot of really cool education coming out. So that's something that for us converts really well. And I think it just speaks to my sex educator lens for this company and people really wanting very detailed education sometimes. And so we are going to give you guys that. We're going to have a lot of really good education that's going to be launching at the top of the year.
No, I love that. All really great things and growth for the brand. So excited to see kind of what that looks like once we get into 2025. So exciting. So can you tell everyone kind of where they can buy Bloomi, how they can follow you as well as the brand, continue to follow the journey, get more education, about sexual wellness?
Yes, everyone can connect with us easily on social. Our handle's the same everywhere. It's at the Bloomi, Bloomi. And you can also sign up for our email. I highly recommend that if you want some good sex education or how-tos with the products, that you start there and just sign up for email or text message, whatever you prefer. And people can shop us on our website. It's thebloomi.com and Target and Target.com and CVS. We just launched in 1,000 CVS stores last month. And CVS.com, which I will say I am so pleasantly surprised with CVS.com. I have to just do this little plug here. I ordered from CVS.com and it arrived to my house in 2 hours.
What?
And I knew about this feature, but I had never tested it. They're literally competing with Amazon.
I'm like, that's better than Amazon.
And it's certain stores have it. And so if you have a local CVS store, get the app, find Bloomi, add Bloomi to your cart. But we also have some of them have that feature where you can get, I forgot what it's called, but on the app, it's basically quick ship. And if you have that, it arrives not even same day, within a few hours, which I love as a mom. I'm like, I'm going to get, if my child is sick and needs medicine or something, now I know there's another resource. So CVS.com was my unexpected happy moment of the year.
I love that. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yes.
And I'll list.
Thank
you. And I will list all of that in the show notes as well. So everybody can know kind of where to shop, fill up on the collection and also see what's new to come as we go into to next year. So thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you, Roberta. This was a great chat. Lots of good questions.
I know. I loved every minute of it.